Um, our next presenter, Howard Stoltz, was in all the breakout rooms with me this morning, so I know a whole lot more about him now. But Howard approached FOR, I think, early in the fall with his ideas of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which have changed a little bit over the 6 months or so. But FOR has been listening to his ideas and trying to work with him and reach out to other organizations to do this. And the thing that I remember that got my interest in the very first time was he said, "I have lots of time," because most of us never say that and probably never will. But it's wonderful to work with someone who is approaching his projects he's dedicated to from that aspect. And he has worked in as a project organizer in high tech, and now he's giving back to society. And it's wonderful to work with you, Howard. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I've got a couple slide presentations I'll attempt to display, and one will give you a little background of the project, and a little background on me. Excuse me. And then I also created a simple PowerPoint presentation of what one of these events that I'm proposing would look like. So let me see if I can present. Actually, I'm going to do my desktop, see how that works. Okay, so come on, there we go. Can everybody see this okay? Oh, wait, well, I do want to do one other thing, sorry. There we go, because I'm going to show a couple of quick videos as well. Okay, so yeah, I started off with the idea of doing, well, we'll get into some background here, but Gene referred to Truth and Reconciliation Mission, which is the idea I started with, but I since found out about the Kellogg Foundation, which was doing something called a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Project. And whereas TRCs are typically focused on a specific horrible event in the past, Truth and Racial Healing is a process going through dealing with where we are today, not necessarily a specific event in the past. Okay. So my presentation will give, I'll spend 20 minutes kind of giving some background about me, about the project, and then leave 10 minutes for a Q&A. So for me, the purpose of this project is, finish admitting people to the room. To me, the purpose of the project is really, you know, in the wake of the George Floyd killing, I really feel like there's a lot of talk about racism, and at least I feel that a lot of racism is based on prejudice, which is based on ignorance. And this series of events that I'd like to put on, the main attempt is to get people to get to see each other as people. There's a lot of people doing great work. This group, I mean, Better Angels, the Erase group we just heard from. There's tons of, I've learned of tons of groups doing very specific, great work. But one thing I haven't heard of much of is people doing things in order to help people connect, see each other as humans. So that's the main attempt. So yeah, I was really just amazed by the national and international reaction to the George Floyd's killing. I remember in the 60s seeing lots of you know, racial equity type work happening, and then it seemed like it kind of faded out. I was just blown away by the reactions to the George Floyd killing. Very encouraging. Feel like now is the time to deal with these things. So and so at that time, so this was last summer, I just happened to be listening to a podcast interview by Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative. And in the podcast, he mentions the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa. And again, I remember reading about it, what was it, back in the 80s or 90s? Where it was an attempt to, as their government was changing, it was an attempt to deal with the, horrific events of the past through telling the truth, hearing personal stories, both from perpetrators and also the victims, in order to help transformation and healing. And then as I mentioned, I learned about the TRHT project and the Kellogg Foundation, and if anyone's interested, I can give them more information about that. And I like that name a little bit better, and that's what my working name for the project now is TRHT. So about me, some of you have heard this story already, but I was a project manager in Silicon Valley for many years. Raised my family in that area for 35 years, burned out in Silicon Valley, and my wife made us move to Minnesota to kind of regain my sanity, which I feel like I did. And then my wife passed away while we were in Minnesota 4 years ago, and I decided to move out here to be near my older daughter who lives in Seattle. I was raised conservative Jewish. I raised my family that way. Actually became a Baha'i in the 1970s, and once I returned to Washington State, I kind of reconnected with the Baha'i faith. And so, Brian Stevenson's talk, the reaction to George Floyd, and again, as I mentioned in one of the breakouts, my wife was Filipino Hawaiian. She referred to herself as Polynesian, and as an incredible, intelligent, well-read person that worked for social justice all her life, many times I saw her discriminated, and I felt like something I wanted to do once I retired to help people. I knew once people got to meet my wife and know her that they would be overcome and love her, and they did. It was just prejudice that often prevented that from happening. So the idea of the TRHT project, which I approached WWFOR, and they've agreed to host or to help support. The idea is to host a series of events, each one focused on a different ethnic group. And each event would consist of a historian talking about the history of how racism affected that group, maybe a little bit about the culture of that group, personal stories from victims, and if possible, from perpetrators. There would be breakout discussions and then reflections, and then in the end we would give either personal talks or at least a list of social action groups that are working with that particular ethnic group. So I'm going to play this little PowerPoint of an example of what one of these TRHT events would look like. And this one, I decided to focus on Native Americans just as an example. They would open up with, basically an agenda here, all the different things that we would do. We talk about the history, culture, breakout sessions, things I just mentioned. Talks about what is the purpose of the TRHT event, a little bit about racism and how it's affected things over history. Some of the quotes from the Kellogg Foundation has a great implementation guide that helps guide groups. They raised $24 million, which they gave to 14 different groups in the US to put on TRHT events. And really, I think my hope is that by learning history and hearing personal stories will improve our understanding and engender sympathy of each other, which I believe is fundamental to enduring racial equity work. These are some of the people that have been involved with my team meetings so far. We've been having meetings off and on since last August, and a couple of the sponsors are you guys. And also I made contact with a professor at George Mason University who's done a lot of work internationally on conflict negotiation, and they're also interested in getting involved with our project somehow. An agenda for the meetings. I won't play these videos, but the idea is nowadays everything would be done by Zoom, but I'd hope someday we could actually have, like in an auditorium, actually have real life people tell their stories, talk about their cultures. And I'll play a little bit of this clip. This is from a Smithsonian director talking about Native American history, just to give you a flavor of the kind of thing I'd like to see happen. So let's see. Can everybody see this? Give me a heads up. Okay, good. I'll just play part of this here.
By the early 19th century, the U.S. was rapidly growing, both in size and power. Land-hungry and ambitious, the new country was also drastically changing its policies towards the Indian nations. And nowhere was this more evident than in the treaties.
The United States' primary interest in treaty making was to acquire Indian land. And so the treaties were used for that purpose, especially as the United States found itself in a position to pretty much dictate the terms of the treaty. And so the treaties morphed from this friendship and reciprocity sort of relationship into a very one-sided thing.
There's almost a mythology about this, that somehow when the Pilgrims arrived, they were dragging land behind them. There was no land brought here. The land here was Native nations. And this is what the United States needed. It's what it wanted. They wanted all of it. They wanted everything.
The greed came in. Well, we have a little tract here now we need a little more. And well, we need to go make another treaty. We didn't understand that eventually those treaty-making processes ended up to the acquisition of all of our ancestral homeland. That land was a part of us. That land helped us be. That land was who we were and who we are.
Okay, so anyway, you get an idea. I'd like to have professors that are experts in each of these different areas to talk about the history of how racism affected that particular group. Here's another little clip I'll play that I think is really interesting. So here's personal stories. It starts off with a stupid dad.
As a 5-year-old child, you walk into the school and you see so many other children crying. And then you have the older children come to you and tell you not to cry because it's going to get worse. But to walk up those stairs and to hear this woman speaking like English and telling me, like, get in that shower, wash yourself, wash everything off, take that brown, wash off that brown skin. And there was soap, I don't know what kind of soap it was, but it burned. Like, I remember the burn and the scrubbing and cry, like wanted to cry because it hurt.
And she said to
wash until you take all your brown skin off, because God doesn't like brown skin. So I tried. I grew up hating the color of my skin. I wanted to be white. I was broken inside, like thinking, how can I make that change to be accepted in society? To go to public school and to be ridiculed because you're Indian, or the names that were given to you. And I never had the knowledge of how to stand up and say, this is my brown skin and I'm proud of it. American Indian movement was, there was a stand in Wounded Knee, and they were standing up for what they believed in, his equality and justice. And I said, I want to be like them. And I finally was able to put my hair in braids. I actually put a feather in my hair just going to school, and then it was just standing up for for what I believed in. I felt like I made a statement, and this is who I am, and you can't hurt me with that anymore. And you can call me any names you want. I am Dakota, and I'm proud of it. And I will stand, like I will stand up for my family. I was a single mom the first time, and it was always her and I. And I made a promise to her that she will never have to feel that she's not worthy.
This reconciliation process, will that make a better world for her, do you think?
Yes, I pray it does. I pray that people find some type of peace within themselves to help us to open their own hearts, so that we can start working together.
Awesome. So things like that, in personal stories, ideally with people personally, if not, then videos like this. This is another one I won't show. Really interesting. Young people talking about how they're identified and how they wish to be identified. So similar to these meetings, the idea we would break out, people would talk about what they've learned, and then there'd be discussion rules.
If you're trying to lose belly fat, stop doing cardio. This sounds backwards, right? Well, believe it or not, it's actually true.
Sorry, I don't know what that is.
Running on the treadmill 5 or even 6 days a week.
Stop!
Most people, no.
Okay. Sorry. Where are we? Here we go. Okay. Breakouts, then coming back together and discussing what came up in the breakout meetings. I would list various social action groups that are involved, or actually have live speakers talking about groups that are working on action specifically aimed at that ethnic group. And then we talk about what were some future TRCs, hopefully with dates. And again, my idea is to focus each of these events on a different ethnic group. Some of them may take several meetings. African American probably would take several of these meetings to even begin to cover the issues and get the stories out. And then I thank people. Ideally, I'd like to have a website where the stories and documentation is stored. Maybe people could do a survey and get some feedback and help connect with us. So that is my presentation. Questions? let me break it back out here. Or did you see any of that I just showed? I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize. It wasn't showing up.
Yes, that's good.
So questions for me. I mean, I approached WWFOR last summer and asked if they would be interested, and David and Bruce Pruitt presented to the board, and they said they'd be interested in participating. I've had only about 3 or 4 team meetings, and I've recently had a couple of people drop off, so I'm kind of in the process of trying to attract some more team members to see if we can get some momentum going to make this happen. So
I have a question for you.
Go, Holly.
Hi. That was wonderful. I would love to know how to access the videos that you showed clips of. And I volunteered to be part of your group of, so you can get my email through FOR, we can communicate. But you're doing the work that I've been wanting to see happen in America and be part of. So well done, Howard. How can I access those videos?
Well, I'll put my email in the chat. Why don't you put yours as well? And hopefully between the two of us, we'll remember to communicate this the request.
Okay.
And I'd be glad to send you the links to those.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good.
Let me send this to everybody. Any other questions? How do I send?
So, Howard?
Yes.
And this is also a question for David. David, if Howard were to send you the links to you, would you be able to send them out to the whole group?
The group that's this group here?
Yes.
Oh, sure. I think we can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
That might be less logistically challenging.
Okay. I know Jean also had asked me if I had any other reference websites and things to put into the newsletter, so I could send that information to David as well. I don't have a ton of information, honestly. It's an idea that we're starting to gel, but those videos, like the Kellogg website or some other websites that people might be interested in, I'd be glad to share. Other questions?
What do you see, David? Howard, what do you see as your timeline? Or is that a hard question?
No. Well, I mean, I had hoped that by now I'd have a regular meeting team and that we'd start planning events. And like I said, I had a couple of people drop off. One of them dropped off because their group is doing something pretty similar, actually. So I'm going to give myself another 3 to 4 months to try and form a regularly meeting team. I've got 2 interfaith leaders that seem very committed. If I can get at least 2 more, I think I think that'll be enough to get us going. So I would like to try and form a team over the next few months and then actually plan the initial event within a year. I think it's going to take some time. I really don't want to just do a funky Zoom meeting. I really want to do well done, really well, presented, interesting, experts, great people. I really want to do something that's going to be very impactful. And it's going to take time and money. So first it takes a group, and then it takes time doing research and getting people and then pulling it off. So within a year is kind of my rough timeline.
Do you have a sense of what group of people of color you would be working with first?
No, so as a project manager, I found that, I'm going to need to work with a group. And when you're working with a group of people, especially people you have never worked before, I think it's really important for the group to kind of come together on what they want to do. African Americans, of course, are receiving a lot of the attention right now, and there definitely need to be probably multiple events focused on them. But I really want the world, the Seattle world at least, to remember and recognize that there's many other ethnic groups as well that are also suffered. And so that's something I'd like to see the group emerge on. I don't have a preference, honestly. It sounds weird, but I'm really not. I'm really interested in helping people see each other as family, and that's all people. I see a lot of people doing a lot of great work within the organizations, but I don't see a lot happening as cross meetings and learning about each other across cultures.
Right. Thank you. Native Americans are so prevalent in Western Washington that I think that's also an important group. And then Asian Americans also now with the current awareness since the killing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I would think you'd want to try to get people from those groups in the planning.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah.
I'm trying. I made contact with several African American religious leaders, and they all expressed interest. And one of them attended a meeting, and then I haven't heard from her again. So, and I understand all the good news is everyone I've talked to, and I've talked with 30, 40 different, mostly interfaith leaders. They're all real busy doing this kind of stuff. I mean, they really are. Working on these racial equity issues within their own communities. So the good news is everyone's busy. The bad news for me is everyone's busy. So, everyone goes, yeah, go for it. The time's right. Now's go. Everyone's been very encouraging.
That's why I wanted you to be here at this gathering, because with the people here, there are a lot of people who have connections with different groups, and I encourage people to approach Howard with your ideas of who might want to work with him on this. My last question is, what about people who are in outside of the Seattle area, like Olympia?
Yeah, I think that's okay. I don't have it. I wanted to keep it somewhat local-ish. I didn't want to. I don't think I want to. I think I want to stay within Washington State because that's my new home now. And so I was thinking initially the Seattle area just because that's kind of where I am. But I wouldn't. I think if it's not anyone who's I certainly think it's fine to include anybody or within any area within Washington.
A lot of people.
It helps if the people are closer. I think it'd be easier to get it going if it's local people as opposed to someone in on the far east. But I won't refuse anybody who's interested and enthusiastic and wants to get involved, frankly.
And we have a freeway, so a lot of people go back and forth between Olympia and
Seattle. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was originally focusing on Seattle, but I think I'd like to see something like this go nationwide eventually. But
sure.
I'll be happy if I can get one of these things off the ground.
So does anybody else have a question for Howard? It looks like we're right on time.
If Howard could put his email in the chat, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I did. I'll do it again.
Yeah, there it is.
I'll do it again. Oh, Holly, I got your email. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Howard.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for letting me present my little project.